Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I'm the Bucks believer. The biggest question on the mind of every single Milwaukee Bucks fan was finally answered tonight, as the Bucks will be facing the Atlanta Hawks in their upcoming Eastern Conference Finals series, which begins on Wednesday night. That's by way of the Hawks' 103-96 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers tonight in the Game 7 of the second-round series between those two teams. This was an excellent team victory for the Hawks, in which they had multiple key role players step up. Earlier tonight, I made a video discussing whether or not I thought the Philadelphia 76ers or the Atlanta Hawks were a worse conference finals matchup for the Bucks. At the end of that video, I came to the surprising conclusion that the Sixers would have been an easier matchup for the Bucks. So in a way, I was rooting for Philadelphia to win this game so that Milwaukee would be spared the trials that come with playing against an Atlanta Hawks team that proved tonight just why I was more scared of them than I was the Sixers. The biggest reason why I feared the Atlanta Hawks is they have a variety of perimeter scorers that can make your team really pay if they're not able to defend them and give them as much attention as is necessary to slow them down. In this game, Trae Young, the biggest star on the Hawks, had a pretty difficult game. Trae was able to finish with 21 points in this game, but a large reason for that was free throw shooting in garbage time, as he went 9 for 11 from the line in this one. Overall, Trae really struggled with his efficiency from the field, as he was just 5 for 23 from the field and 2 for 11 from the three-point line. That's not particularly good, and the Sixers, Ben Simmons in particular, did an excellent job of making every shot that Trae took as difficult as possible. Trae was also forced into turning the ball over 6 times, including a key turnover late in the fourth quarter where he had it poked away by Ben Simmons from behind. Luckily for the Hawks, in Trae's failures, Kevin Huerter stepped up and had some huge successes. This was the biggest game of Huerter's young career, and he also might have had his best game of his young career, as he had 27 points on 10 for 18 shooting, went 2 for 4 from beyond the three-point line, and made 5 of his 7 free throw attempts. Red Velvet, yes, that is his actual nickname. Kevin Huerter becomes a great player in my mind just because of that nickname, by the way, was destroying Seth Curry in this game. Whenever the Sixers had Curry matched up on Huerter, the Hawks were sure to take advantage of that, and Huerter was able to use his length on the jump shot to really be able to shoot over Curry. Curry actually did a solid job of keeping Red Velvet in front of him and had some really nice contests on Huerter's jumpers, but Kevin was just able to knock down some really difficult jump shots in the mid-range tonight, and even had some tough and ones where he drew some contact from Curry and was still able to finish off the midi despite that contact. Huerter also was able to really get going for the Hawks in times of need, as it felt like whenever the Sixers started to make a run and cut into Atlanta's lead late in the third and fourth quarters, Huerter was able to knock down a key shot for Atlanta. So overall, just a great game from Kevin, and it made up for Trae Young's struggles as a scorer. Trae did have a really nice game as a passer, as he finished with 10 assists. In this game, we saw his usual pick-and-roll chemistry with Clint Capella really get going for the Hawks. It was really fun to watch him dissect the Sixers' defense while he was particularly paying attention to Joel Embiid. Young has one of the best floater shots in the entire NBA, and when Clint Capella was setting a screen on the guy who was defending Young, the Sixers were really forced to pay a lot of attention to Trae to avoid him from getting that open floater. Because of that, Embiid was forced to creep up just a little bit on the screen, and Young was easily able to find Capella for a lob every time that happened. Capella finished with 13 points on 6 for 8 shooting in this one, and I think that just about every single one of those points came off of an assist from Trae Young. So Young did have a solid game passing-wise to make up for his deficiencies as a scorer in this one. He also made a crazy laser of a pass, shredding the defense to John Collins for an easy dunk that I would be remiss to avoid mentioning. So while Trae did have those struggles as a scorer, he more than made up for it as a passer. And while I'm talking about Collins, he did have a great night for the Hawks. You wouldn't necessarily know it from looking at the box score, as John was limited to 14 points, and considering scoring is usually the area in which he makes his greatest contribution, 14 isn't quite up to his standards, as he averaged 18 points per game this regular season. However, Collins didn't take too many shots in this one, as the Hawks were mostly focused on getting their perimeter guys going. Collins was efficient when he was able to shoot the ball, as he went 5 for 6 from the field and made all 4 of his free throws. But the areas where he really made a difference was on the defensive end of the court. He drew multiple key charges, at least one of those on Joel Embiid and at least one other on Ben Simmons. There might have been even more than that, but those are the 2 that I remember, and each of those were really key plays from Collins. Collins has flashed some ability as a charge taker in the past when I have watched the Hawks, so that's an area that could cause some trouble for the Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the more charge-prone players in the entire NBA. So with Collins potentially being a primary defender on Giannis for a large part of this upcoming series, Giannis is going to have to be careful not to lower his shoulder and create too much contact with Collins, because John is going to do a nice job of putting himself in position to draw an offensive foul on Giannis in that situation. Also, with what I talked about with the Capella-Young pick and roll, it's going to be really interesting to see how the Bucks defend that. I think to start, they're going to go off in their usual drop coverage scheme where Brook Lopez is seeping all the way back into the paint. That's going to open up some floater shots for Young, and so the Bucks are going to have some good rear view contests from Jrue Holiday, but I think that the Bucks are more willing to live with those floaters than they are with Clint Capella dunks, so Brook is going to be dropping back to deal with that. It's more interesting when Giannis is guarding either Capella or Onyeka Okongwu or John Collins, whoever the screener is in that situation, because Giannis has much more defensive versatility than Lopez does, and there's a chance that the Bucks could switch those actions, or at the very least bring Giannis up higher to contest Young's floater, and possibly could even still recover to his man rolling to the basket after showing some help. That's going to be another key area for the Bucks on the defensive end of the court in this series, which I'm sure I will cover more in future videos. Anyways, getting back to Collins, he also had a great contribution for the Hawks in this game as a rebounder, as he pulled down 16 boards. His impact on defense and rebounding the basketball, as well as his efficient scoring, made Collins a really key piece in the recipe for a victory for Atlanta in this game, and he's going to remain important for them in the series against Milwaukee, especially if he sees extended periods of time guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo, which certainly wouldn't shock me considering that he drew the Ben Simmons matchup for large portions of this series against the 76ers. In addition to Collins, Herter, and Young having nice games, Danilo Gallinari also played quite well for Atlanta. He had 17 points in this game and made some really key three-pointers at important junctures for the Hawks. He was 3 for 7 from beyond the arc, and he also probably made the most important defensive play of the game, knocking the ball away from Joel Embiid, which allowed him to break out into a fast break where Kevin Herter found him with a nice baseball pass for an easy dunk. That came late in the fourth quarter, and it took the Hawks' lead from 4 points to 6 and essentially put some icing on the cake of a series victory for the Hawks. So a nice game from Gallinari, and that kind of depth in terms of scoring the basketball that the Hawks have on their roster is really important for them moving forward. They're going to need guys to step up, especially with Jrue Holiday guarding Trae Young, as I think Holiday's got a chance to really make Young an inefficient scorer. If the other guys can step up around Trae, it's going to make Atlanta that much more threatening against Milwaukee. Finally, I do want to touch on the Philadelphia 76ers just a little bit, but I won't dive too much into them because, well, they're not playing the Bucks in the upcoming series. Joel Embiid had a really nice game for Philly as he had 31 points and 11 rebounds while shooting 11 for 21 from the field and 7 for 10 from the free throw line. He got it going early in the fourth quarter and kept Philly in this game when it appeared that they were actually going to get blown out a little bit as the Hawks went on a quick 7-0 run at the end of the third quarter, and it looked like there was a chance that this one could get ugly for the Sixers. Embiid reasserted himself at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and that little run he went on gave the Sixers a chance to close out this game. Unfortunately, they couldn't quite do so. largely because of the struggles of everyone else on the roster around him and because of Embiid's turnover issues. As I touched on before, Gallinari made that nice play to come away with a steal, but besides that, Embiid had 8 total turnovers, so that is not a good game from the Philly big man in terms of ball control. The Sixers also could have gotten a bit more out of their second and third best players in Tobias Harris and especially Ben Simmons. Simmons had a nice game as a passer, dishing out 13 assists, but he only took 4 shots in this game and couldn't even stay on the court to close it out, as he struggles from the free throw line, and Coach Doc Rivers was afraid that the Hawks coach, Nate McMillan, would go into a hack-a-bench strategy as he had at other points during this series. So for Simmons, the Sixers needed more out of him, and they also needed more out of Tobias Harris. Tobias did finish with 24 shots in this game, but a lot of the time he had mismatches on the offensive end of the court against smaller Hawks guards, and he couldn't take advantage of those as he shot a very inefficient 8 for 24 from the field. The Sixers needed more than 24 points on the 24 shots that Harris took in this game, and unfortunately for them, they couldn't quite get there, and that led to this loss for the Sixers. It's not the biggest reason why, but it certainly did play a part. All of Atlanta's perimeter scoring overwhelmed a Philadelphia team that really struggled to generate offense from anyone outside of Joel Embiid. The Bucks are certainly going to have their hands full in this series against the Hawks, and they're going to have to do a good job of containing all of the Hawks' perimeter scoring. Otherwise, I could see the Hawks really making this a tough series for the Bucks, and perhaps we could see yet another Game 7 between these Eastern Conference rivals. Let me know what your thoughts are on this game in the comments section down below. Be sure to keep your head up and watch out for lots of more Bucks content on this series against the Hawks in the coming days. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.